the charitable status of private schools, that we should abandon being obsessed with A stars at GCSE. In fact, even better, we should abandon GCSEs altogether. So, quite a lot to talk about, and it's now over to you for questions. As I said, Jen's going to take questions in pairs. Interesting arrangement, not threes, not ones, but pairs. So who wants to start? This lady. In a minute. We're going to start at the back with some younger people first. Well, you're very young, but younger. Anyone's back? Yes, there's the young person. Go on, you're first. Yeah, by the way, our microphones failed, so you're going to shout.
That's fine. So you mentioned quite a lot about academy trusts and how that was becoming a fundamental part of the schooling rhetoric. I went to the academy myself. The sponsor was called Lilac Sky Schools, and they did what they said on the tin. They painted the school purple. They had a massive purple cube, and we all wore purple uniform. And it was in the news a few years back that the academy sponsor was fired by the Department for Education for not reaching its results. So how would you make academy trusts accountable for their actions? Obviously, in an ideal world, academy trusts would be removed entirely, but how would you make them accountable
for their actions? Okay. More.
Yeah.
Could you maybe say what you think about Teach First? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Okay, I'll do that one first.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
Sorry.
So I'll do the second question first, which is what I think of Teach First. I'm in favour of people doing it. I'm not against it, but I wish people would know about the problems with it when they start off. There's a problem with the name. The name Teach First implies you do a little bit of teaching before you go on to your proper job in the City of London making a lot of money. That's not the kind of thing that gets you good teachers. Good teachers are people who really want to be a teacher. It also tends to put children from slightly posher backgrounds into schools in poor areas, which is not a good idea for your first teaching place. Not so much for the teacher, it's the pupils I'm thinking of. So it could be rearranged and it could be better. But it's an interesting experiment. I'm not trying to be completely negative about it, but it has this arrogant colonial thing about it that this particular government is really into. You know, going out to the poor areas and helping them. And it doesn't, that kind of thing doesn't happen in other countries. The other question was about academy trusts and what can be done. I would just pick them off one by one as they break the law and found to be illegally moving money somebody's cashing in the back pocket. I'd do it that way. And I'd use, well, already the Crown Prosecution Service is involved in numerous cases. You put immoral people in charge of schools, you're going to get scandals. And that, in effect, is what they've done. So I'd pick them off. The question is, what do you replace them with? You can replace them with cooperative academies to begin with, who are assigned to the cooperative movement. That's easy because it already exists, and there are hundreds of cooperative academies. But long term, I would have schools run by a governing body which included a lot of teachers in the schools and a few parents and a few counsellors. But most importantly, the actual people working in the schools, the governing body, and the governing body having the power to sack the head. Now this may sound mad. You might think, how can you have the teachers being able to sack the head? Right? This model works. It's called an Oxford and a Cambridge College. It's worked for 800 years. I and my fellow members of the governing body of St Peter's College, Oxford, sack the master anytime we want to. It's robust. And there's other people on the governing body of the college. So what I replaced it with eventually is a model based on that, which is where the people, and they include the person who makes all the food for the kids as well, because nobody realises how difficult it is to actually feed all these children every lunchtime. But we still haven't got them onto the governing body of colleges. I promise my other answers will be shorter.
It's even more radical in parts of Switzerland, but they don't have heads. Each teacher takes in turn, market system. So right at the back, Yes. Yes. Right at the back. You have to shout a lot.
You've talked about an awful lot of changes that need to be made to the education system over the next 10 years, from what happens in individual classrooms up to citywide school structures, up to political and examination structures. What order do you think those changes need to take place in order to this to have worked over the next 10 years?
I wondered if you'd like to comment on early education and the new policy that's come in since September 17, where state education is now linked to parental employment, where children can access nursery education dependent on what the hours and the number of parents who are working. Therefore, we know already that 75% of children accessing 30 hours are from socio-economic groups 1 and 2, and only 3% from the lower socio-economic, and what that will do for equality in the future in our education system.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, the first question is easy. What order? People always, I'm not going to be king, so these are suggestions. Don't worry. People always complain about change, and they say they want to, can't you just leave it alone for a few years? But the problem is we're going to have change because we're becoming poorer. To give you an example, Britain became poor in the 30s and then much poorer in the 40s. And as a result, the middle class couldn't afford the doctor. So they invented the National Health Service. It's not quite as bad as that. But we're going to have to make these changes because otherwise we're going to have an appalling system by 10 years' time. I'll begin with the senior management teams of the schools, because that begins to stop the idea of competition. It also helps with the housing market. We've got to cool our housing market down. How do you cool the housing market down? One trick is you have a government in waiting saying it will introduce rent control. That should calm down landlords a bit. The other is you say just by buying a particular area it doesn't guarantee your child will go to that school. So it calms it down. So I will begin with that because it solves other problems of inequality that we have. The changes to access to preschool education, benefiting social classes 1 and 2, it's a bit like Ryanair. When anybody's actually studied who actually goes on EasyJet and Ryanair, it's social classes 1 and 2. Go on their cheap foreign holiday, it's not the working class who do this. I think we want to go to a very different position in the future. So my ideal is that if parents want to look after their children and not work, they should be able to do that, particularly men. Partly because men who look after children live longer. We know this from evidence from Sweden in the 70s. They're the only ones who were doing it in the 70s. But it should be possible not to have you both going to work. Because what we have at the moment is, you have a baby, the baby gets to about 4 months. One of you works out how the hell to get the baby to the nursery in the morning through rush hour. You deposit your baby at the nursery. Some young woman, it's always a young woman, aged 22, manages to get from the poor side of town to your side of town to care for your baby during the day. There's an enormous movement of adults, all to maximise GDP. Whereas if the baby was cared in a different way that didn't make money, it wouldn't count. So we need to be working out how to make it an actual choice whether you do this or don't. Putting lots of small children together, though, is generally a good idea. Because you can go mad on your own looking after a small child, which is why playgroups were so good in the 1970s, because they got people out of their houses. But also it's great to share germs. And the other thing that's great is that small children are very good at eating when they're in big groups. Whereas if you feed one on their own in a chair, they misbehave. So we've turned, I may be sounding sort of slightly mad about this, but the profit motive in preschool education has diverted us away so far from what is a good childhood before the age of 6 and what is good for parents before the age of 6, that we're now obsessed by how am I going to get my vouchers to be able to get the child in for 30 hours because we've both got to work on these really boring jobs because we've got to pay this enormous mortgage for the house that we bought to get into the catchment of the school that they're going to be in after the nursery, that we can only just afford because interest rates are so low and they're not going to go up. They're not going to go up. And you're worrying about getting them into the nursery. And this is why I'm being slightly alarmist about how much has to change.
Right, I'm now going to come to the front row. People on the front row need to shout even louder, even though it feels unnatural. So, you're in front row.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask about the bold assertion in one of your early slides. Sorry, I better cross my face backwards. It might be. The assertion in one of your early slides that the intellectual case for grammar schools has collapsed. I'd like to know what the evidence for that is. And particularly, I'd like to know what you think of the evidence from the largest grammar school area in the whole UK, which isn't Kent, as usually claimed by the newspapers, but it's in fact Northern Ireland, where a region of about nearly 2 million people, where about half the children go to grammar school, and has pretty well the best achievement at GCSE and A-level in the UK region. It's usually up there with the southeast of England. It's very popular. It's popular with voters in Northern Ireland, even with families whose children are likely to go to grammar school. Northern Ireland's sort of working class area. It used to have a below average achievement across compared to other parts of the UK, until the rest of the UK went comprehensive, and suddenly the rest of the UK fell below Northern Ireland.
Okay. Thank you. So anybody else on the frontish row? Yes, I saw you first. Come back.
You mentioned governance of schools. I wondered if we ought to be comparing it with the GMA, which has governance of the profession. And I remember talking to I'm not a teacher, talking to a teacher about where's your overriding governing body, and she said there isn't one. Now, if that's the case, and individual schools run their own affairs in whatever way they like, based on lack of governance, then they're subject to the pressures of the political system. And we will have different fashions in teaching, we have fragmentation of different schools, we have fragmentation of the structure. Some children move schools at 11, some have lower, middle and high. Things are, it's a mess. And it seems to me that lack of governance at the professional level means that the industry doesn't manage its own affairs.
Right, can people at the back hear that?
Not well. It would be good if people at the front stood up.
That's right, I think it might well be a good idea.
Okay, how we go?
Dan, you want to repeat the question?
I'll read questions in the past. The grammar school debate's been going on for a long time. In that Guardian letter, it referred to, I think, well over 130 pieces of evidence. Most of the evidence is on the grammar schools don't work side. One group that they're bad for, which often doesn't realise, is people who just scrape their way into a grammar school, and then they're at the bottom of the school from age 11, 12 and 13 onwards. And they're under research as a group. Parents tend to be optimistic, so that whenever you poll parents of primary school children, they will say they're in favour of grammar schools, just a small majority, because the small majority believe their children are in that 20% who will get in. In fact, children are optimistic until they hit age 15. They think they're going to do really well. Around about 15, they begin to realise that they're not. Why? Well, I partly answered the question about Northern Ireland getting higher results. That doesn't mean they're cleverer. Private schools get higher results. That doesn't mean they're producing more able children. There's a lovely paper in the British Medical Journal, I think it could be this week, showing that children from state schools who go and study medicine are in the top 10% of medical students, far more often than children from private schools who study medicine. The children from private schools have even higher A-levels and GCSEs when they enter medical school, but they're not actually better. The children from state schools with lower exam results do better at medicine. It matters because they kill you less. The other thing that Northern Ireland may be a case, and it happens here at North Norfolk, and it happens down in Cornwall, is children in really remote places do better at school. I don't know because I haven't lived in Northern Ireland. I just have a suspicion that the incentive on the Falls Road to try a bit harder might be higher. And that's an interesting thing with cities. If you grow up somewhere where you really don't want to be there when you're 18, you try hard at school. The second question was about governance of schools and what happens if schools govern themselves completely. I think you do need oversight. The way they do it in Finland is very light touch. They actually do test children. They test a sample of them in schools to check how the school's doing, not the child. Because there will always be a school that gets a problem, something goes wrong. But it's a light touch because it should only go wrong rarely. Whereas what we currently have is an idea that all the time a quarter of our schools are failing and another quarter are truly outstanding. And both things are ridiculous. Now these outstanding schools are not outstanding. They've got lilac paint and stupid quotes written on the walls, you know, and a CCTV system up because you actually can't even trust the pupils in an outstanding school.
Interesting, the Chief Inspector of Schools said almost the same thing that Danny said about teaching maths and teaching for tests. So perhaps things are about to change. Right? We'll go back up this way. So first, you then Blondie.
Danny, very interesting talk. And I wanted to pick up on the issue of local government because a couple of days ago, Cambridgeshire County Council voted to cut a huge amount of money, £900,000, from the city's and the county's nurseries, disproportionately hitting Cambridge City. A Conservative-run county council on a city that doesn't have a single Conservative councillor, so massive divide between county and city. Is the reform of local government and getting much more coordination between the services and giving local councils much stronger powers of taxation and spending been an issue that successive governments have basically bottled on, and as a result we've got ideas such as academies running things here and privatised hospitals over there?
Or to translate that to 2027, is local government reform on the critical path to doing what we want to do?
Yeah.
It's a tangential question. I was education correspondent for the BBC in this region in the 1990s when governments were getting rid of local education authorities, and people like Professor Ted Ragg, other educationalists predicted the scenario that you've spelt out, which exists in modern Britain today. So my question to you is very similar. Do you think you can chart this decline, and would you reinvent local education authorities?
Okay. They're both good questions about what goes on. It was similar in Oxford in the 80s. In Oxford in the 80s, the schools with terrapins, you know, those huts were all in the city. Our teachers taught us that the county council hated us, which is partly where my politics came from. And they said the reason why we had one with a tree growing through a hole in the classroom. The teacher decorated it at Christmas. They're not making it up. And we're taught it's because they think you're worthless because you live in the city and your job is to clean the colleges and work in a car factory. So you don't need a good education. So from my school, 2% went to university. So why would you bother with the buildings? Conservative administration in the past. One danger of people on the left is that they want to go back to the 70s or 60s often for solutions. So there's campaigns for council housing, there's campaigns for comprehensive schools. What the left used to be good at was suggesting things which were new, like council houses before there were any, like comprehensive schools before there were any. I wouldn't go back to local education authorities with the all-powerful area education officer. You were lucky. If that education officer was brilliant, it had a huge effect. They sacked the headmasters who liked caning too much because they enjoyed it. That was what a really good area education officer did in the 80s. But it relied on one person often too much and one council too much. I would have these collections of schools, like 5 or 6, with a big governing body being looked at, and then I'd have a mechanism for working out if things were going wrong with it. How you recreate the right local government areas, I don't know. I ought to as a geographer. My hope though on that is the problem will partly go away. Because the problem at the moment is about 40% of people vote Conservative in the country. And there are a majority in these rural rings in the south around towns. And they elect people who make other people's lives a misery. Now with Brexit, the popularity of that particular party as it destroys itself with infighting. If it could actually reduce permanently to less than 15%, then you no longer have to worry about how you cut up local areas so much, it's not so important. This might sound quite mad by 2027, but work out where we've come from. We used to have a Conservative Party in this country many years ago, and it was allied with the other Conservative parties in Europe. It then moved so far to the right, it could only make friends with the Polish Law and Justice Party, and couldn't be in the Conservative bloc anymore. It then created the biggest potential economic mess the country's ever seen, and began to fight itself in a way you've never seen before. Now the idea that 40% of people, almost all of whom are not benefiting personally economically from this, are going to carry on supporting this as strong and stable, is just unlikely by 10 years' time. And that, the idea of having this ring of people around your city who don't care, or voting people who don't care, I think we're going to get away from that. And we did that in the past. We did that in the 20s and 30s, but all the political parties moved to the left again and again and again, so you get Howard Macmillan building more council houses than Labour managed. This has happened over time. We then moved to the right, moved to the right, moved to the right. Labour introduced loans and fees, the first academy schools, the beginning of privatisation of parts of the NHS, just a little bit, but enough to make it easier for the Conservatives when they come in, till we get to this point of maximum inequality. We now see inequality dropping in various measures. In August, for the first time in my lifetime, the incomes of chief executive officers of companies came down. The BBC now has to publish the salaries of people. There's lots of signs of things changing. The Minister for Universities tells Vice-Chancellors off for taking too much cash. You know, it's a really interesting time at the moment. So if you really want change, big change by 2027, you need to be in a country in which 40% of people are not voting Conservative. Otherwise things will not get better. Because I'm afraid the Conservatives do not make things better for most people.
Luckily, Danny mentioned Vice-Chancellor's pay just after the Vice-Chancellor ARU left. So over there next, I'll be on this side. Anne.
Thank you. I just want to make one comment and then ask you a question. And my comment is, perhaps you don't know, but in driving Toby Young out of Oxford, you have forced him on in Cambridge. So he will open a preschool here in Cambridge in 2019. Thank you very much. And my question is, one experiment which was tried in America in the Reagan charter schools, those that were oversubscribed were allowed to admit students by lottery. And this, of course, would be, I think, a perfect way of preventing selection by house class. And I just wonder what you feel about that.
I really like your idea about collaboration schools applied in Oxford City. I was just wondering what you think about how you would do that, for example, in where I come from in Northumberland, in really rural areas, or similarly in really large cities where you just get a similar thing that's going on in Oxford, but with clusters of schools. So, for example, in London, would you get all these people trying to get into this big cluster that's over here and not wanting to be in the cluster that's over there?
Okay. I apologise for Toby Young. It's amazing, his father helped set up the entire Open University, and he just sets up a couple of schools that cause so much upset. It kind of shows about the genetic quality. The lottery is a lovely idea in theory. The problem comes when a child from the completely opposite side of town has to cross town. And the most likely way in which children, or anybody up to the age of, I think it's now 25, dies by being hit by a car in this country. But if you remember nothing else than what I've said tonight, if you remember, if you're under 25, my age it's a heart, I'm afraid, and older. If you're under 25, just cross the road carefully, not so much more than anything else. That's why you can't do a lottery, until you've sorted out the towns and made them safe enough to move the children across. That's why I would begin by, in effect, legally merging school sites, because you can certainly move the teachers around. You know, they can cycle safely. The tragedy is far too many of them drive, even short distances. But they can get around the sites. And then you can begin to move children in ways that's physically possible. So that's what I do. The second question, Tony, what was the second question again?
Just kind of...
Oh, how do you do it in Northumberland? Yes. It's got to be, it's a different solution in different areas. It isn't an actual prescription for what you do. In a really, like Alec, you know, a really sparse area, there's not much you can do. My aunt used to be GP for up in near Alec, where she was helicoptered across by the RAF to get to patients. You're physically constrained. The same with children in the far north of Scotland, where they have to come over by ferry and they have to board. You know, but one extreme you've got that. What you're desperately trying to avoid is this is the one good school and these are the two bad ones near each other. And what creates all the problems is when they're commutable, when you can actually you've got a choice of schools. That's when you can have one which becomes favoured and the other becomes unfavoured. And that's when you want to make the sites the same school. There is one big problem with my idea, which is children in London do particularly well. They mainly do well because of immigration. Immigration has trumped everything in London. It's not the London Challenge or whatever. It's the children of immigrants just tend to be very, very good at schools. So London state schools have just blown out of proportion. With inequality, we've managed to damage this massively because most poor children in London are now in private renting, not council housing, and they're having to move house every 3 years in school. But one other small part of why London works is if you don't like your school for a particular reason in London, there are other schools you can go to relatively easily. The middle class don't see this in London. The middle class go, it's terrible, 20% go private in London, it's really hard, I need to get in the right area, I can't get my child into the right school in London. What the middle class don't see is that there are hardly any bad schools in London, just not the ones they want their children to go to. So if you're not middle class, it's actually utopia. The bottom 10th of schools in London, this is 10 years ago, the bottom 10 were getting higher GCSEs than the whole of Norfolk. That is unbelievable. But it shows what kind of things are happening.
Right, let's have the last two. I promised there, and yes, you can for longer. So these two, I'm sorry that I'm very long. But
and yet you talked about universities being remote from their location.
Yeah, people at the front have to stand up and shout.
No, it's very brief. You talked about universities being remote from their location, and that will chime very heavily with people who live in Cambridge. Apart from your reference to having an intake, perhaps, of local students, what else would you advise? What else should we push for in terms of trying to encourage our local universities to be more embedded in the community?
Would you say that a way to combat the system in schools being exam-driven would be to move towards a more pass-fail system? So everyone would get to a certain standard, but you also wouldn't get the whole, like, some universities are better because you have to get higher grades, and if you have A stars, you're amazing. Because I've certainly found that I'm lucky in getting good grades, some of my friends are not, and they've found it really difficult to get through school systems.
So what do you mean by the pass-fail system?
It's in, like, you get to certain standards, and you can pass, and you can study more, but it's not like, it's not, you don't get a cycle of people having to resit English GCSEs so they get a C, and it's not like, it's not as geared toward, you can't be the best because there's not a best grade, you just get to a certain standard that's like you can write.
Okay, and then you can carry on.
Yeah, and you can study if you want, but you don't, like, it's not
I get you. Yeah. Okay, the first question is what can universities do to fit in better? It's the same in Oxford. in Oxford we used to have a local university, it was called Oxford Poly. It's now Oxford Brookes, and it only takes, I think it's now only about a tenth of children from the county, not the city. So there was a lovely map the government did a few years ago about areas that were black holes which lacked a university. I think when Lincoln didn't have one. And there was areas where children couldn't go to university. And Oxford was one of the areas. Doesn't have a university. As far as local population is concerned. Because if you don't get AAB, it's nowhere for you to go. We can easily go back in effect in the 80s and actually have some going locally. It's all just trading on the word Oxford. It's the same as trading on the word Cambridge here. But there's a lot more that just needs to be done. I don't know if things are as bad here as they are where I work. Where I work, the university thinks that the city is lucky to have the university. And we are purely a blessing on the city. And the city should be grateful for our existence. And it is so arrogant and damaging and silly. So the university realises, where I work, that there's a housing problem because it can't get professors. Because professors want trees in their gardens and they actually want a garden. What the university doesn't realise is that for university staff there's a problem if their children can't go to a school where the school teachers can stay. So we need universities to actually understand about the existence of society. This is an Oxford and Cambridge problem in particular, but it's also a Newcastle problem and a Sheffield problem and a Leeds problem that's there. And you can see, I can see what's the two. Where was the second question again? Say it again. Oh, about just passing. Yeah. Passing. What I'm going to end on. I'm against A stars and ones and AA stars. I mean, this is just it's a sign of stupidity. That's why Gove did it, because he's not very clever. It's ridiculous, you know. Let's have 9s and 8s. I've seen what you need to do to get to a 9 and 8, by the way, and it isn't actually about being better, but we're getting towards the end of this. I like systems that allow people who really want to work to keep on working and trying, and give people a way to drop out temporarily who have got bored, and not just be there because they have to be there for their parents. So whatever system you set up, and the same for schools, you don't want children sitting in schools at 17 bored out of their mind because they've got to be there. So whatever system you set up, you want it to be a system that maximises the amount of time that people who want to learn are learning, and minimises the amount of time that somebody is pretending to learn when they don't really want to be there. Your scope is very, very wide. You could, for instance, set up a system where everybody passes really well, and a few people pass really, really well, and you could just have 2 grades, really well and really, really well. And you might have worked out what it is, because you're in it. We don't give out any 2 2s anymore at my university. 2-1 first, 2 thirds, 1 third. It's not quite the point of all giving exactly the same degree. But if we can do that, the idea that you need to do A star, whatever down, we're not doing it in Oxford University. Why do you need to do it anyway? The way in which you show you're good is by learning more and then doing something with that you've learned. You know, actually writing that book, building that machine, creating a computer program, helping make an aeroplane fly. I had a member of my family, of one of the more affluent parts of my family, who went to a very expensive school. And when he was quite young, he said to my mother, I got 98% in maths. My mother, who wasn't being particularly kind, just said to him, what's 98%? And he said, I don't know. And I've got it in maths. And that is what we don't need. Thank you for your patience and putting up with me. Thank you.